Good morning, everybody, to another live stream. This one I'm super excited about because we just got a brand new update. Well, it's been a couple of days now. I'm admittedly a little behind, but we got this amazing new update to GPT-4o. It all started with this tweet that we have here, which if I zoom in here, says GPT-4o just got an update. The model's creative writing ability has leveled up, more natural, engaging, and tailored writing to improve relevance and readability. It's also better at working with uploaded files, providing deeper insights and more thorough responses. So huge new update. Kind of a throwaway comment here from OpenAI, just putting it out in a tweet. There's no blog post or anything that I know about. And yet for creative writers like myself, this is huge news. If it's true, if it's everything that they say it is. And of course, when I see the phrase creative writing ability, I naturally go to fiction or creative nonfiction, like memoirs and stuff like that. And I don't necessarily think that that's what they mean specifically when they say creative writing ability, because they're more interested in natural, engaging, and tailored writing to improve relevance and readability. Readability, I think, being the key word here. And so what I think they've been going for is they've been trying to remove the single biggest complaint that I hear people talk about with all of the GPT models. And that is that it sounds very robotic. It sounds not human. It sounds like there's lots of like flourishing words and words like delve and testament and the key takeaway, all of these things that it comes up with quite frequently. I'm assuming and hoping that this creative writing update really just helped remove all of that and made all of its writing capability just a little bit more natural. I think that's probably what they were going for. I've said many times that these big giant companies don't care about authors too much. They care about making a large language model that can do tons of different things, that can be everything to everyone. But it doesn't necessarily specialize in anything specific like creative writing. However, I do think that they want a model that sounds more or less natural. Okay, that makes sense to me. And so we're going to test this thing out today. We're going to use OpenRouter to do it so we can side-by-side compare between the old model and the new model. And I'll throw in Claude 3.5 Sonnet in there because it has previously been the undisputed champion of more natural prose, at least in the world of AI. It certainly could use some work as well, but the reason I've been using Claude up to this point has been because of its creative writing abilities in comparison to ChatGPT. And if before we get into the testing, I just want to say, if this is true, if it actually gets if the readability is much more human and much better at creative writing, that almost would make me want to switch from Claude to ChatGPT as my main chatbot that I use, because ChatGPT has had a lot of really attractive features over the months. I'm about to say years, but we've only had it for 2 years now. It's all of the other things that ChatGPT can do, it's much better. It's like I've been using it recently for some data entry stuff. It's much better at that sort of thing than Claude is. And it's better at reasoning and math and that sort of thing. But the only reason I preferred Claude, well, maybe not the only reason, but the main reason why I preferred Claude was it was much better than ChatGPT at creative writing. So if this is now better than Claude, or at least comparable to Claude, I kind of doubt it's going to be better than Claude, but it'll at least be the same as Claude. That kind of removes any barrier that I had to making ChatGPT my main go-to model. Anyway, enough of me chatting about it. Let's go and actually talk about this and compare some prompts. So first of all, let's go to, this is OpenRouter. We're going to add a couple of models in here. So the new one you'll see here is this model GPT-4o with the November 20th date here from 2021 or 2024. which you'll see here also says this version offers a leveled up creative writing ability with more natural, engaging, and tailored writing. Basically the same thing we saw in that tweet. So we're going to go ahead and select that. We're also going to add the previous version of GPT-4o in here so we can compare and see just how much of an improvement has it made. If I can find it. That's 01. Where are we? Here we go. Okay, here's the previous one. And we'll go ahead and add, I can search 3.5 Sonnet. Self-moderated as the other main model that we're going to test here because it has been the gold standard so far, at least among the big models for creative writing. So let's start with a couple of prompts. I've got a list of test prompts that I use here. We'll start with a logline test. This one isn't necessarily creative writing per se, as it is like brainstorming, which is a separate skill, but we'll see if there's any improvements. I'm not necessarily expecting any improvements here. We're asking it for some log lines for a mythic urban fantasy story. I'll give it a minute. Looks like GPT-4o finished pretty quickly. A jaded paramedic discovers she's the only one who can heal dying magical creatures in a hidden city, but doing so puts her own humanity at risk. I don't necessarily see the connection between those ideas, but okay. At least it's somewhat original. When a struggling graffiti artist is chosen as the new guardian of an ancient urban rune, he must battle a secretive cult based on erasing all magic from the world. Okay, that's interesting. A debt-ridden private investigator bonds with a rebellious succubus to stop an ancient demon from auctioning off the city's souls, including her own. Actually, that one sounds interesting. It is getting the format of Blake Snyder's log lines correct, complete with the adjective and everything in front of the main title there. Let's see what we got out of the previous version. A reluctant werewolf lawyer must defend supernatural beings in a hidden magical court, but when a case threatens the barrier between realms, she must embrace her curse to save humanity. An introverted librarian discovers he's a sole guardian of the magical city. Yeah, these are good. They're not really any different than what we had before. Let's look at Claude. When a dyslexic teen discovers she can read ancient runes that control reality, she must master her gift to stop a corporate warlock from rewriting the laws of magic itself. Homeless veteran who can see through the supernatural disguises becomes the reluctant guardian of Manhattan's mythical creatures, just as an ancient. Yeah. Again, I don't really see any major significant differences between these three models. Maybe a slight improvement for the new model here, but that's okay. I wasn't really expecting much for this particular prompt because it was more of a brainstorming prompt than a writing prompt. So let's go ahead, and I like this debt-ridden private investigator bonds with a rebellious succubus. So we're going to use that in our next prompt. Let's see. So the next prompt is going to be this. Using the following concept and outline template, generate a fully fleshed out outline for this book. And we'll put this in the, whoops, didn't mean to do that. Hang on, I need a word pad. Just something to stick some of these concepts in. Okay. Give me a second. The format in OpenRouter has changed, and now I don't know where the button is. There it is. Clear the chat. That's what I wanted. Okay, so bring in that prompt again. And I'm going to pull in my 40 chapter plot module outline. So this is going to be a lengthy prompt. and we'll let it go. I see someone in the chat says, I've been using it. It's been crazy and helping me fix my writing up. The prose is pretty solid. Yeah, that's great. I've heard good things, and I've done a little bit of testing myself, but okay, so let's see what we got. We open in an ornate penthouse with walls streaking in pulsating shadows. High stakes underground auction is taking place. The bidders, sleek inhuman figures disguised as humans, selling a tangible glowing representation of human souls. Okay, yeah. It's inventing names of characters, which is cool since we didn't really have any characters talked about yet. Opening scene, Amara Doyle, a debt-ridden private investigator in her mid-30s, sits in her grimy office. The flickering neon sign outside her window hums, illuminating towers of unpaid bills on her desk. Cigarette smoke wafts in the room as she argues with the landlord. Flaw. So, okay. Save the cat moment. On the run, she spots a runaway teenager being hassled by gang members, though it costs her a moment of escape. She steps in. Yeah, that's kind of like random. That's okay. That's just like other. Oh, wow. GPT. This one's still going. So this one has the unseen auction thing going on as well. So the writing definitely sounds more natural in the other one, but as far as its creativeness in creating the outline, I don't necessarily see anything better here. Because it does have some things like the sinister plans unfold. That's definitely a sort of GPT-ism there. Let's see. Let me look through some of these. It's this one did give me more detail, but it also stopped after 10 chapters, and so I would have to ask it to continue to do the rest of the scenes. That's okay though, because you can just do that. This one, it looks like it did the whole thing. That's pretty cool. I'm surprised. Looks like Claude also broke it down. Okay, so this is the newer version of Claude, and the newer version of Claude does not do long output very well. And in this case, it only did 3 chapters plus the prologue. So, not so great, Claude. At least in terms of what it was able to do, I prefer what the GPT models gave me here. So let's see. A terrifying businessman stands on a supernatural auction block. They all went to the auction. That might be a bad sign. That might mean that it's like too obvious of a thing. Demon auctioneer sells a soul to a crowd of otherworldly beings. The man's body slumps as his essence is extracted and bottled. Final image reveals dozens of soul bottles lined up ready for sale. I actually like that. It's a good final image of the chapter. PI Maya Chen wakes up to debt collectors banging on her door. Her office apartment is filled with unpaid bills. Yeah, they all went to this too for the first chapter, which makes sense given the premise. It makes sense that would be your first chapter. She's hired to find a wealthy client's missing daughter. The pay would cover her mounting debts. Her ex-partner, now successful, shows up to gloat, offer to buy her out. Maya helps an elderly neighbor with groceries despite being late for a meeting. See, I what it's doing there is in my plot template, my outline template, I have it, have a save the cat moment, and it always does whatever the most obvious save the cat moment thing is, and it's usually not. It's like random inside of the chapter. It doesn't really fit the chapter. We see her talent for finding people, but also her stubborn pride of refusing to help. So I think other than that save the cat moment here, which the others didn't get that one right either, I actually like the outline it's giving me here a little bit better. But the problem is it only gave me like 4 chapters, 3 plus the prologue. And that's not great. So I want to go up, now that I've looked through that, I want to go through this moment again. Yeah, so I'm looking at this, what the GPT model, and it's good, it's good enough that I would be okay just starting to fix it up and work with it. It's good enough as a starting place. But again, this is still more of a brainstorming prompt, less of a creative writing prompt. So let's get into some creative writing prompts here. I think I just want it to take this opening scene. So we're going to say write the first 500. We'll test its ability to actually, let's expand that a little bit. Let's say 800. See how well it does. Words of chapter 1, the unusual day. Using this summary. And we'll just leave it at that. We'll make it a pretty simple thing. I just want to see how well it does at opening a chapter. I'll give it, well, let's just go with that. Let's go with something simple. And I'll leave this chat here so that all three can work on this. And let's go. Okay. I'm going to go in reverse order this time. We're going to look at Claude first. And then we'll look at the old GPT-4o. I'm also going to, let's pull up word counter so we can test the number of words that it's giving us. All right, this one's done. Definitely not 800 words. So Claude gave us, actually, that's not too bad, 659 words. That's not bad at all, actually. That's more than I expected from Claude. The neon sign outside Amara Doyle's office window flickered with the persistence of a dying firelight, casting alternate shadows across mountains of past due notices. She pressed her phone closer to her ear as if that might somehow make Mr. Chen more reasonable about the rent. Listen, I just need until Friday, she said, stabbing out her cigarette in an overflowing ashtray. I've got a job that's about to pay out. That's what you said last week, Miss Doyle. The landlord's voice crackled through the speaker. And the week before that, I've got bills too, you know. So this isn't a bad opening. This opening, Claude doesn't necessarily do opening paragraphs well, but then once it gets past that, it does pretty well. It would be nice if it had a stronger opening. But we got some dialogue here. It's pretty good as dialogue goes. Definitely a good starting place for sure. Let's look at the old GPT-4o. Amara Doyle leaned back in her worn-out swivel chair, her eyes tracing the flickering neon sign outside her window. The hazy red glow intermittently illuminated the towers of unpaid bills that threatened to swallow her worn-out desk. Definitely a lot of GPT-isms here. Lots of unnecessary words. Yeah, just overly purple writing. She balanced a cigarette between her lips, exhaling smoke into the dim, cluttered room. Her grim office was a patchwork of cracked plaster, peeling paint, and the acrid scent of desperation that hung in the air like stale cologne. I will say this for ChatGPT, it does do more description. It definitely paints a picture more so than Claude does. The problem is it does so in a way that is so over the top that it's almost unusable and unusable, and you have to rewrite it. Let's see what it did here with the dialogue. Listen, Mr. Klein, Amara barked into the phone pinned between her cheek and shoulder, fingers rhythmically tapping against her desk. I told you I'm good for it. Just need a few more weeks. Her landlord's annoyed voice crackled through the receiver like sandpaper, a constant itch she'd rather not deal with. Here's a good example of just like, we don't need all that, right? We just need him to answer. She could imagine his smug face as he reminded her once again of the rent due 2 weeks ago. You've been saying that for months, Amara. The building doesn't run on promises, and that seems like a kind of cliche thing. Definitely the dialogue sounded more natural with Claude. So let's test how many words we got out of the old version of ChatGPT. Oh, 885. So it actually exceeded what I asked it to do. That's pretty cool. So now let's look at the new version of ChatGPT and see if it's any improved. First of all, let's check out the number of words. 1,000 words. Did I get that right? Wow. It actually did more. Cool. So let's read this. The neon sign outside Amara Doyle's window buzzed and flickered intermittently, casting her shadow across a pile of unpaid bills. She let out a slow, resigned sigh and dropped her forehead into the waiting palm of her hand. The red letters of Doyle Investigations blinked like a weak heartbeat, spilling splashes of color over an ashtray overflowing with cigarette butts and a half-empty bottle of whiskey she couldn't afford to replace. So already I can tell, like, it's got that same ChatGPT tendency to paint the picture. Like I said, it does a decent job with description. There's definitely fewer ChatGPT-isms in here. Not like they're not completely gone, but they're significantly reduced. So that's cool. The landlord's bitter voice crackled down the line, sharp enough to make her regret even picking up the phone. You're 3 months behind, Doyle. I want the check by Friday, or you're out. You think I'm going to let you squat in my building for free? Amara rolled her eyes, though there was no one there to see it but the yellowing walls of her office. Don't you think being a PI is a public service? You know, keeping the world safe from scumbags and cheaters? Maybe I should send an invoice to City Hall. Ha! The laugh was wet and unapologetic. Ooh, I can't talk today. City Hall doesn't pay your heating bill, and neither do I. Come Friday, I'm installing a new lock. You've got 2 days. The line disconnected with a click. So definitely better. I almost think that the dialogue in Claude was slightly better. Let me go back to this. Listen, I just need until Friday. I've got a job that's about to pay out. That's what you said last week, Miss Doyle. And the week before that, I've got bills too, you know. Friday, she repeated firmly, I promise. 2 days, then we talk about eviction. Yeah, I think the dialogue is still a bit better in Claude here. Just a bit. In fact, structurally, I feel like the new version of ChatGPT here is giving me a lot of what the old version did, but it's doing so in a way that does sound more natural. Like, I'll give it that. It does sound significantly more natural than the previous version of ChatGPT. And perhaps if we played with it a little bit more, we'd see other improvements. Oh, wow. We have a swear word in here from ChatGPT. Or from GPT-4o, I should say, to be more accurate. That's kind of interesting. I wonder if it understands the context of creative writing a little bit better and allows for more colorful stuff there. And here's another one. Okay, so it doesn't mind swearing as much. I wanna try. Let's bring in a novel crafter prompt so we can test what novel crafter would look like. Using one of those prompts. Let's see. Okay, yeah, then we'll do this. So we'll go general purpose. So we'll just do a normal prompt. Grab the prompt here. And I'll go ahead and clear this chat. We don't need all that context. So let's try this novel crafter prompt. And we'll go again in reverse order here. So Claude gives us, Mina leapt across another gap between buildings, her boots landing silently on wet slate. The encounter with William had given her much to consider, but movement below caught her eye. A dark shape slunk through the shadows, a wolf padding down the empty street. Her muscles tense. Wolves didn't venture into London, not ordinary ones. She dropped to the street level, landing in a crouch. The wolf's gray coat blended with the pre-dawn mist as it turned down an alley. Its movements were too deliberate, too purposeful. So yeah, that's okay. Let's see. Old GPT-4o says, as Mina traversed, there's a AIism right there, the quiet streets, her thoughts lingered on the boy's story and the peculiar mention of a flute. The night held secrets and the city hummed with undiscovered truths. She moved with the purpose, the cloak fluttering behind her, veering deeper into the labyrinthine alleyways. Labyrinthine, who actually says that word? Then a glimmer of movement in the periphery snagged her attention. Mina paused, peering into the misty gloom. Just ahead, a shadow seemed to ripple against the cobblestones. Her eyes caught the flicker of a tail vanishing behind a narrow corner. Too agile, too deliberate for a stray dot. A wolf, prowling far from its habitat. Yeah, definitely, again, better at sort of painting the scene, but doing so in a way that is just not great. Way too much. It just doesn't sound natural at all. So let's try the new ChatGPT. Mina slipped between the alleyways and out into the shadowed streets. Her pace quickened as dawn's faint light began its inevitable crawl across the horizon. She kept her hood low, weaving among the remnants of the night's crowd, street sweepers, delivery boys, and the occasional constable finishing his rounds. Her footsteps fell quietly, but her mind was loud, circling back to the boy's words. A lady in red, a silver flute, an auction. Her thoughts fractured when an unexpected movement stirred just within her peripheral vision. A shape low to the ground, moving too purposefully to be a stray dog. She froze mid-step, the scent of damp stone and soot filling her nostrils as she strained to see through the mist. The shape emerged briefly from the haze, stepping into clearer view. A wolf. Way better. Oh, way better than the old GPT. Like, oh my gosh, that's so much better. Now, I won't say it's better or worse than Claude 3.5 Sonnet at this point. It's one of those things where I think we're getting to a point where each of the models are good, and it's going to come down to personal preference. I still like Claude quite a bit just looking at this, but like, this is good. This is and in fact, I might use this depending on what situation I'm in. Like, I might switch between Claude or GPT depending on what situation I'm in. Like, for instance, I think Claude, just based on these preliminary tests that we've run, I think Claude might be better for dialogue. So if I'm writing dialogue, I might switch to Claude. But this might be better for just other stuff, action, transitions between scenes, all of that stuff, natural description and things like that. GPT-4o, the new version here, seems to do really well. And this is at the point where it's hard. It would be hard to identify it as AI written, which is really cool, actually. Okay, yeah, good question here. Who is cheaper? Well, let's go look at the activity here. So they're about the same price, but it looks like GPT-4o is just marginally cheaper than Claude 3.5 Sonnet. So the GPT-4o, both of the GPT-4os, this last one cost 1 cent and like basically 1.48 cents. And Claude 3.5 Sonnet cost almost 2 cents. So just a little bit more for that prompt. And if we look at like some of these other prompts here that were a little bit bigger, GPT-4o cost just over 2 cents, and Claude 3.5 Sonnet cost just over 3 cents. So yeah, that is something to keep in mind. Let's do a few more tests. Let's go ahead. So we've definitely confirmed that it is significantly better at writing prose than the previous version of GPT-4o. And depending on your preferences, potentially better than Claude 3.5 Sonnet, although I would say they are kind of comparable but different. So it comes down to what style you like better. I think that was already the case. There were already people that preferred the style of GPT-4 and GPT-4o. I was not one of those people. To me, Claude was the clear winner every single time. Now it's just going to be much more of a debate, and I wouldn't even debate it. I would just say, what's your preference? Do you like this prose that it gave you, or do you like what Claude gave you? We'll just have to see. But let's go ahead and let's do something else a little bit different. So we're going to do this prompt for ad headlines, because AI by default is not really good at copywriting. But with you have to give it just a ton of prompting to get it to do copywriting well. So I want to test how well it does with a simple copywriting prompt, asking for 20 Facebook ad headlines to sell a book about food addiction, a personal memoir talking about how someone overcame food addiction and the benefits they receive. This is my standard ad headline test. Let's see what it gives us. All right, we'll do Claude first. From food prison to food freedom, my journey to break free. Already, like, anytime it has this colon in the center, I kind of like lose interest, because it does that by default, and it's not necessarily very good. How I beat food addiction and lost 100 pounds without dieting. That's not a bad one. Nope. Food was my drug of choice until I found this way out. Better. Okay, so there are a couple of gems hidden in Claude here, but nothing super fancy. Old ChatGPT, breaking free, discovering the journey from food addiction to freedom. Nope, definitely not. Uncover the story of triumph over it. Nope. Learn how I conquered food addiction and transformed my life. Nope. From chains to change. Nope. Yeah, I'm not seeing any good ones in here from the old ChatGPT. So let's look at the new ChatGPT. From hopeless to empowered. No. Do you struggle with food addiction? Okay, better. Read this heartfelt story of freedom and healing. Okay, not too bad, but not great. I finally broke free from food addiction. Find out how you can too. Better, but not great. The raw truth about food addiction and the journey to take my life back. Food addiction almost destroyed my life until I found a way out. That's better. Okay, so definitely better than what we got before, but still not amazing. I would almost say Claude was better, but I mean, yeah, there's some good ones here. What food addiction took from me and how I fought back. Food was my escape until I found true freedom. Read my story today. No more binges, no more guilt. No. So there are a couple of gems in there. Definitely an improvement over the old GPT, but still it still has a little ways to come. All right, I'm gonna also well, hang on, let's do another one. Clear chat. And now we're going to write me a fully fleshed out email in the style of Ryan Holiday's emails. It should announce the release of the following book that I've just finished writing. The release date is upcoming on December 1st, and the email should include a placeholder to put a link to the book. And I'll just grab a book description from one of my books. This one's already out, but I'll just put all of this information in there. And we'll see how it writes an email. Claude says, friends, I wanted to tell you about something I've been working on. On December 1st, my new book, Path of the Dragon, will be released. It's the first in a new series called The Fairy Queen. And while on the surface, it's an Arthurian fantasy about princess fighting dragons, it's really about something more universal, the courage to face our demons, both literal and metaphorical. Okay. Getting a little bit cheesy there. Old ChatGPT says, I hope this message finds you in great spirits and with a thirst for adventure. Oh gosh. Because I have exciting news to share that promises to transport you to a time of magic, myth, magic, and might. Oh, I would never use this. Let's see what the new one does. I like it. Looks better formatted. There's like interesting stuff here. Some books are written for entertainment, some are written to expose truths about the world, and some are written to challenge us, to make us see the stories that shaped us with fresh eyes. For centuries, the story of King Arthur has been one of the most enduring myths, tales of knights and duty, villainy and valor, quests and search for something greater. But what if I told you there was another side of these tales that's rarely been told? It's with a great excitement that I announce my new book to you, Path of the Dragon, the first installment of the Fairy Queen series. It's a heart-pounding reimagining of the Arthurian legends, one that centers on Una, a young princess who must summon impossible courage to face the dragons, demons, and betrayals that aim to destroy her. The official release date is December 21st. Today, I want to personally share with you a bit about this story. And then it like gives a book description here. Early responses have been incredible. It just made these up. At least I think it did. I didn't. Okay, so yeah, it doesn't actually have reviews that it's drawing from here. So I made those up. Pre-order your copy here. What I ask of you: number one, pre-order on Amazon to ensure you get your copy the moment the book is released. Share this book with anybody you know. Once you've read it, let me know what you think by leaving a review on Amazon or Goodreads. Your feedback means the world to me. Definitely sounds more like it's coming from a person. Does that make sense? Like it's using me and I in a good context. It gets a little cheesy in places, and like overly press releasey. But that could just be an issue with the prompt. On the whole, this is way better than the old GPT version, and I would say probably even better than Claude. Yeah, because Claude's got some kind of weird things in there, weird cheesy things. And I really like how this formatted things, like it had the call to action here very clearly marked out. Like this is, it's well written. For sure, it's just maybe not necessarily writing the right thing. So I would need to change the prompt to make it do that. But this is good. I think if I ever want to automate emails, this might be the model that becomes my new go-to model to do email writing. That's pretty cool. Last but not least, let's do a. This is an old SEO writing prompt that I have. I know it's old because I'm still using the square brackets here instead of the angle brackets. But basically this is asking for an informational article about Helen of Troy, because I have a mythology based website, and I give it some style tips. I give it keywords I want to include along with the number of times to include it. I have the outline of the article here, using H2 and H3 tags so it knows how to order it. And then this is just a whole bunch of information from other articles on the web to make sure it has all of the information it needs to write this article. So it's a really long prompt. Let's see. It's like 16,000 words. So we'll see if it can actually do all of that and how well it does. So let's go ahead. First, let's clear this chat and go ahead and run this prompt. Because in the past, when it comes to factual information for article writing and stuff like that, ChatGPT was better. The problem was that ChatGPT just didn't sound very natural. It was very hard to get the prose to sound good when coming out of ChatGPT. So once again, Claude did not write very much. It wrote as much as it could and then said, would you like me to continue with the next sections following the outline? That's typical of the new Claude update. It's not great. So let's go ahead and test the words. Whoops. Let's test the word counts that we had on these. So Claude clearly did not do the whole thing. It wrote only less than 300 words. I want this thing to be more like 2,000 if I were to, do the whole thing exactly like I'd like. So the old ChatGPT wrote 1500, that's not bad. Pretty good. Let's read a little bit. Helen of Troy, heralded in Greek mythology as the most beautiful woman in the world, is an enigmatic, that word, and compelling figure whose legacy has sparked another GPTism there, myth and scholarly debate for centuries. Others referred to as the face that launched, often referred to as the face that launched 1,000 ships. Helen's abduction by Prince Paris of the city of Troy instigated the famous Trojan War, etc., etc. 1,500 words. Okay. Let's see how many words we got here out of the new version of ChatGPT. 1,200. So not as many as I'd like. You can, of course, fix that by just going in sections and not trying to do the whole thing at once. I also, it doesn't seem as scannable. But let's read a little bit. Helen of Troy, the woman who has fascinated generations, don't really like that phrase, is arguably one of the most iconic and debated characters in Greek mythology. I don't really like that whole opening sentence. Known as the face that launched 1,000 ships, she is often considered both a victim of love and a catalyst for the decade-long Trojan War. Was Helen a hopeless romantic swept away by destiny, or was she a cunning seductress who chose to abandon her marriage and homeland to uncover the truth? Well, even humans do not do well at intros, so I should probably not compare the intro here. Let's go to like the section, the myths involving Helen of Troy. Helen's life story is full of drama, disdain, and destiny. I'm not actually liking this too much. Below are the key episodes of her myth. The birth of Helen. Helen's origins are one of Greek legend's most famous stories. It's still having a lot of these like introductory sentences that don't really add much to the content. After Zeus disguised himself as a swan, he seduced or raped Leda, the queen of Sparta. Leda later laid an egg. Woo! Say that 5 times fast. Or 2 in some accounts, hatching Helen and her siblings. This unusual birth narrative underscores Helen's semi-divine and miraculous nature, perhaps hinting at her celestial beauty. There's another sentence that doesn't really add much. It's just like a concluding sentence. Let's look at that same section here with old GPT. Helen's myth, like a cartographer's tapestry of kaleidoscopic topography, unveils successive fascinating chronicles. Okay. The new ChatGPT is clearly better than that. Oh my gosh, that is awful. And this is an old prompt, so maybe if I adjusted the prompt, the new GPT-4o would write a little better, but oh my gosh, that is awful. And then Claude didn't even get to that section. But Claude is more succinct, which I do like, just looking at what it's done here. So these days, I think Perplexity is actually a good model if you want to write articles. You just can't do a whole article at once. You need to go section by section. But Perplexity has the tools to make that pretty easy. And so that's what I would be using these days. As long as you're, of course, checking and double checking and writing everything well. Okay. Those are all my test prompts that I had today. So I'm going to go ahead and do a couple of questions and scan through the chat here to see. So we have one question. How does one edit a book with ChatGPT? I wouldn't. ChatGPT is it's a large language model. It's meant to be generative. It's not designed to be an editor. It can do some editing, and there are tools that use it in that way, like Edit GPT, which I don't think I have a video coming out about that soonish. It does a decent job with simple stuff like proofreading. But the amount of prompting and stuff you have to do to get it to edit consistently and well, it's just not great, especially if you want more high level structural things that require thought to like make it better. Those kind of things, AI is a long way away from being able to do well. And you're much better off getting a human editor to go through those higher level things. Are there issues going back and forth between models in terms of flow and readability? So I assume, like when I was talking about going from Claude to Chat GPT, yeah, you're likely to run into some issues of flow and style, which is why, as I always say, you need to be the person going through and validating everything. Make sure everything is good, and if it's not, like, make sure it fits with your style, your vision, all of that stuff. Edit it to your liking, and that's really what's going to make the difference. We don't want the AI to do everything for us. It's just a tool to get us partway there. Okay, so we have comments here. It says it's so much better, but dialogue is still Claude. Yeah, I think I agree. From what I've seen, Claude still does dialogue better. It wrote a brutal death scene. So yeah, I guess it can do slightly more edgier stuff. I'm not going to test like a full-on not safe for work prompt here because I don't, we're live on YouTube and I don't want to get demonetized. But even if I were to use a not safe for work prompt, I really doubt that it would do that, but it could probably do edgier stuff where it would have previously had problems doing that. I found the new Mistral to be quite good for writing as well. Yeah, I have plans to do a video about those. I'll probably film those today, actually. We went through that. One comment here says, Claude is still better overall, especially for humor. It's good to see others improving, though. Yeah, Claude's definitely the best one for humor. I wouldn't say it's good at humor, but it's the best one for humor. And Dulce says, okay, I don't really understand what people mean when they say validating. So this was a term that I originally got from Elizabeth Ann West over the Future Fiction Academy. I think I have a link to them down below. They're also the people behind Raptorite, if you want to check out that free tool. But validating is basically, it's different from the word, it includes but is not exclusively editing. So obviously when you're editing something, you're improving it, you're editing, right? Sometimes though, what AI gives you is okay. And so all you're doing is really validating that the writing that it's given you is okay. And if it's not okay, you edit it, and that is also validating. So validating is just going through the stuff that it gave you and making sure it's good. Editing what isn't good and leaving what is. That's really all it is. So that's validating. And it's something you want to do at every stage of the process. Otherwise, you're going to basically lose control of your story, and it probably won't be very good unless you are checking it along the way. Any other questions in the chat? Go. Feel free to put those in there. Otherwise, I'm probably going to wrap up here soon. We've only been here for 48 minutes. That went faster than I thought, but I am kind of like done with my test prompts. Are there any other test prompts that you would like me to do to test here inside of OpenRouter? Feel free to put those in the chat. Thomas says, hello to all. Hello, Thomas. Would be a good use case. So here's a question. Are you planning to do another prompt-only novel soon? Not in the near future. My plan is to do one of those every year. Every year I'll do a prompt-only book. And that way we can kind of like look at the old ones and see just how well is it improving with nothing but prompts. Because it's eventually going to get to a point where it needs, where it can write a good book with nothing but prompts and no human validation, which is a little scary, but we'll see. Because if AI can do that well enough without human validation, then just think of what you could do with AI with a human involved. That's my philosophy there. All right. Danny says, yeah, you need to certainly edit everything, as I have caught the AI leaving out words or using wrong possessive words like pluralization, etc. Yeah. Yeah. So, all right. Oh yeah. And, another comment from Dill say, I remember you mentioned doing discovery writing. I'm interested in that. Yeah, I would like to do a discovery written novel. I'm not in a good position right now to do that in the near future because of just stuff on my schedule. One of the things I will tell you this that is on my radar, it's going to probably start next year. And by that, I mean in like 6 weeks, 7 weeks, January timeframe, is I want to really compare the 3 biggest tools out there. I'm not talking about models, because models can be anything, but I want to really test the 3 biggest tools that use the models, which are Sudowrite, Novel Crafter, and Raptorwrite. And if you guys don't know Ikello over at Future Fiction Factory, he and I are going to sit down together because he's more of a Raptorwrite guy and I'm more of a Novel Crafter guy, and so I really want to like understand the nuances between those 2 programs. They're, in my view, they're not that different, but he seems to think that they are, and so I'm going to go through with him some of those nuances to really test out the 2, and then I'm going to write a novella in all 3 of those programs. And once I've actually gone through and written a novella from start to finish, using Sudowrite, using Novel Crafter, using Raptorwrite, I think I'll have a much better idea on just the subtle little differences between the 3, and be able to give a much more accurate and informed opinion on which one I like the most. There's never ever one best solution for everybody. People are different, and so even if I say, hey, yeah, this one is my favorite, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the best one for you in your situation. But I do like really diving deep into these things. All right. Do I ever use AI to help with outlining? Yes, I do, but usually more as a brainstorming companion. I like to do the outlining myself for the most part. I don't rely on what the AI gives me as being very good. But I will usually start the outlining process myself. I usually have an idea of how it starts and I'll get into it. And then if I get stuck, I'll turn to the AI and ask it to give me ideas. Or I will go chapter by chapter and say, give me 5 ideas for this chapter using this template. I'll give it an idea of what should happen in the chapter, and it will give me a couple of ideas, and then I pick the best one or just, get inspired by the ideas and write it myself. That's my outlining process. It's usually it almost takes me longer to outline a book these days than it does to write the actual prose of the book, because I like that process so much and I like digging deep into it and all of that. And we got someone giving some love for Raptorwrite. Have you done a video about getting your novels printed, or who do you use? So I only use print on demand. There's 2 options. You can use a print on demand, or you can get your book printed wide, like in a large wholesale kind of thing, and it all gets shipped to your house. So you can end up with like hundreds of books coming to your house, and then it's up to you to sell them. It's cheaper to do that model per thing, but then you're obligated to sell it all. Print on demand is just so much easier, much less headache. And Amazon KDP is the biggest one for that. There are a number of others. Ingram Spark, Book Vault is one of my favorites with what they're doing for you can do sprayed edges and all kinds of cool things with Book Vault that you couldn't do elsewhere. But I would just say start with Amazon. Amazon KDP is where you publish the ebooks, and you can set up a print book so it's print on demand, and that's where I'd start. Dulce says, I'm a novel crafter woman, but I love that Raptor Write exists and folks can have it for free. I agree. Raptor Write is free. That's its biggest advantage, and it's simple, which for some people, they really like that. I personally like the flexibility that Novel Crafter gives me. I can do almost anything in there. It's kind of a Adobe Photoshop of everything, but some people find that intimidating, and for them, maybe Raptor Write might be a better option. Or Pseudo Write. I know Pseudo Write I haven't talked about too much on this channel, but I'm currently beta testing a new model that they've created, and let's just to tease it, it's pretty good. There will be a video coming out. I've already filmed it, just waiting for permission to release it. Should be here in the next week or so. Danny says you should do a video on your outlining process. I'd like that. That's a good idea. In fact, I should probably do a video on just like each step of it's been a while since I did a video on each step of the writing process using AI and my methods for doing so. I think the reason I haven't done that is because there's just so many ways of doing it. And I try to be prescriptive to a certain degree. I'd be like, this is like the best way that I know of how to do X, Y, Z. But I think that's probably not feasible these days, just due to the fact that there's so many different ways to do it. But so I can just give you my way, but it won't necessarily be the best way for you. So Dulcie says, I've heard about that new model from Pseudo Write and I'm interested. Yep, it's good. That's all I'll say about it for now. It has some drawbacks, let's say. They're not necessarily unexpected drawbacks. And the developers are working on it. But when it works, oh boy, does it work. Thoughts on the new GPT Canvas feature? It's fine. As far as I'm concerned, it's not groundbreaking enough to warrant like its own video or anything. It's just another way of interacting inside of ChatGPT, which is helpful, but yeah, not particularly groundbreaking. And part of that is just because I don't do most of my writing inside of ChatGPT, and I don't think most people should either, because you lose a lot of control, a lot of things that you might want to have access to that you can't in ChatGPT, like temperature and access to all of the different models and stuff like that. So I think it's useful to have a chatbot to use as a kind of catch-all for everything else that you don't have a specific program for. But if you want to write, I recommend one of the big three: Pseudo Write, Novel Crafter, Raptor Write, that are specifically designed to help you write, and those things will serve that main function. And then having a chatbot, either ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, would be my top recommendations, just to be a kind of catch-all for everything else that you'd want to use. So Holly says, I have ChatGPT Plus, but it doesn't look like that. What part are you in? I'm on my phone, so maybe it looks differently. So this is actually not ChatGPT. This is Open Router. I came here so I could compare the different models. So I have the newest version of ChatGPT here, the old version here, and Claude. I can test all of the different models here inside of Open Router's system. You can't do that in ChatGPT because you can't access other models like Claude and stuff like that. So that's why I came here to Open Router for my testing. Just so I could test them all side by side with the same prompts. And so, yeah, do I use beats when I write? Kind of. I use a scene summary of what happens in the scene. It's essentially the same thing. Speaking of Future Fiction Academy, they told me that when it comes to publishing traditionally, the US allows copyright the election and arrangement of AI passages. That sounds promising. Yeah, that's why when people tell me that you can't copyright AI written text, I just totally disregard that because they don't know what they're talking about. Because if you have gone through the process of validating, to use that term again, all of your text and editing it significantly and arranging it in to fit your vision, then you can copyright that text under election and arrangement of the text. It's still kind of going in with the assumption that the actual AI passages that you have in there are still public domain, but you don't have to disclose which portions of your book were using AI and which were you. You don't have to disclose that. You can just copyright the book. So using OpenRouter, how do you feed the entire novel so far in order for it to have the full novel for reference? I would not do that in OpenRouter. It's the interface for it is not great. But keep in mind that AI doesn't have memory at all. Like none of these models that claim to have a huge memory actually have memory. Every time you run a prompt, every single time, you are giving it all of the information it needs. And that's true whether you're using Novel Crafter or anything else. So Novel Crafter has your entire novel here, and it can read behind all of that and everything. But all it's doing is just taking large chunks of your text and including it in the prompt. Even something like Notebook LM or something like that claims to have this like big memory, all it's doing is it's including all of that memory, so-called memory, in the prompt in some way, or it's using a RAG retrieval method, which is different and usually less effective. So basically, if you want it to know stuff about your book, like your entire novel needs to be in the prompt, if that makes sense. So that's just the way it works. AI doesn't actually have memory. How do you organize your file system for more easier access and recall and preservation of all old in the drafts? I probably don't do it that well. I would not consider myself an overly organized person. I don't necessarily want all of the old drafts. I just am concerned about the newest draft, the best draft. There are tools coming. So Atticus is my main tool that I use for formatting my books and often for writing the books. It's not an AI writing tool, but if I'm just writing myself, I'll just do it directly in Atticus. And it's got memory coming, so you'll be able to look through old versions. If you're concerned about memory, I would just use Google Docs or something like that, where you can track the old memory of your drafts. Google Docs is what I used to write in before Atticus came around. But these days, I just don't play around. Don says, random question, why not just use OpenAI Playground for everything? Yeah, you could. You absolutely could. I think the only advantage that ChatGPT has over OpenAI's Playground is that the interface is a little simpler. But in terms of functionality, you can do more in OpenAI's Playground than you can inside of ChatGPT. But really, ChatGPT is not meant for people who know what they're doing. It's meant for everybody else who just wants an easy access to AI that does most of what they need it to. But if you're someone who's using AI heavily and playing around with it, you're going to want to learn how to use the APIs inside of OpenAI's Playground, or inside of OpenRouter, like I have here, or in a more advanced tool that is specifically designed for whatever type of AI writing that you're doing, like Novel Crafter, like Raptorite, or any of the others. Okay. I think that'll about do it for our questions. Thank you all for being here and for watching me prompt this thing. Bottom line, for this new version of ChatGPT, it is 100% much better, not just at writing creative writing, but just in general, the readability of all that it writes is significantly improved. Do I think it's better than Claude 3.5? Not necessarily. There's no clear better or worse than Claude 3.5. It's going to come down probably to preference, which one you prefer. between those two. So that's my bottom line from this initial test. Of course, we'll keep going, and I'm sure there will be more updates soon. We're overdue for Claude 3.5 Opus at some point. Hopefully that comes out soon. We also are overdue. We're supposedly in the next few weeks, we'll be getting the real version of GPT-4o. We've only had the preview version so far. So the actual like #1 version of 01 should be coming here soon. I'll make sure to do a live stream about that as soon as it drops, assuming I'm in a place where I can do so, because we are going to be traveling for the holidays. But hopefully, that'll happen soon, and we can make a video on it. So thank you all, and I will see you in the next video.